Okay, my outstanding friends, we're going to take a trip back to when I wrote this paper. It was called Jesus Chemistry, up on academia.edu. Now, I wrote this, I think 2016. Hold on. Yeah, 2016. Jesus, the chemistry about Jesus. How did I come up with chemistry about Jesus? Well, is he as he was advertised? I do a lot in the realm of chemistry, biology, anatomy, all that stuff. So let's think about the chemistry. Now, I am looking at it from the perspective of what Velikovsky reported about the Great Flood and the several catastrophes. When they happened, who was here on Earth, who created the catastrophe, what was the catastrophe made out of, how did it occur, what was the material substances involved, and what was the aftermath, and what was the aftermath to society and humanity, and where was it documented, who wrote all these things, who had all these things written down. In every culture had basically a similar story, not identical by any means, because in the intervening 3,000 years, there's a little give and take here, and especially in diverse groups. So there's a common thread. I go for the common thread. So let's work with, first of all, Jesus. Was he as advertised? I mean, he was a pretty important guy. Now, is he what they said he was? And if he was, can I tie it into anything else? And, this could be very disturbing for a lot of people, because there's different ways to take this. And I'll be right up front with you. My take is that Jesus was here to warn us that all of these terrible, terrible things were real, and these monsters and these realms that you could end up in are real, and they're not good. Some of them can be fabulous, I guess. I can't remember being anywhere in any of them, but I'm trying. And if you don't try, you're just gonna, I don't know what happens. At this point, I think you must get recycled, and it depends how bad you were here, where you get recycled to. You may get recycled, the guy just, he's not ready. Yeah, you give him a pretty good place and let him have a pretty good life, but he's just not ready. Or you could be, that guy was bad. Make him understand what badness is all about. Or they may say, this guy's fabulous. He's just exactly what we want. Bring him up here and let's work with this guy. At this point, I think that's probably what's going on. I really honestly do. So let's think about the Jesus chemistry, and let's think about what Velikovsky said about Venus being ejected from the feared god Jupiter and almost wiping out life on Earth, causing what I would consider to be the Great Flood. So let's get into the paper first, because I remember writing it, but I don't remember exactly what's in there, so let's read it together. All right, so this goes back to August of 2016, and I'm saying, what chemistry is there? What am I basing these statements on? And I say, I present this as a clinical work on our history. Clinical. Let's see what I mean by that. All original texts and stories and religious works and carvings, tablets, and myths of all cultures are considered. Nothing is thrown away. The sources range from scholarly translations to museums to Immanuel Velikovsky, who I must call a hero. And he absolutely was. And it's an I instead of an E. I'm sorry, Emmanuel, my good friend. His research was legwork. He went out and did the work. No computers, no, a lot of documents he had to go out and get. And they were unimpeachable evidence of Venus' recent arrival. And I put this video, I don't even know if this video explains the document, 60 points he made. He was a friend of Einstein, was about to be acknowledged by Albert, but Albert died with Velikovsky's book open. Now, 32 points he made came true about Venus, and more since. And I have absolute 100% evidence of exactly what he's talking about, and explains everything basically. All this is against academic theory. It's all against academic theory, which was the problem. So a great hero was destroyed. Now, this is a shocker, and the chemistry, when tied to the recorded events, it's unimpeachable. It's just, there's no way to deny it, as I have shown for years now. I'm showing a short video of clinical evidence, the case for Jesus, the chemistry and the stories, do they match? Now, here's the key. We had all the plagues of Egypt, and they were let's talk about the birth of Venus, and what would happen if it was a literal birth, and that stuff came against Earth. What would happen? All right, remember this. Velikovsky, my hero, found that everybody had basically the same story. The feared god Jupiter, this is Jupiter, and this is the great red spot. That's Jupiter, showing if there was a birth from the great red spot. This is the size of Venus and Earth. It fit right in there, perfect. Now, Caesar here is obscuring a graphic picture of a female body part, which is the great red spot. Now, if you don't want to see that kind of stuff, turn away for the next few minutes, because I'm going to show you the great red spot is literally a vagina, and it actually gave birth the way a vagina would to a creature, which in this case happened to be Venus, and it would have had an umbilical cord, and it would have had a placenta, and it would have been saturated with red blood everywhere, and it would have been like in a ball coming out of Venus, out of that right there. Now, why do I say that is a vagina? Here, I'll show it. I've shown this so many times. All right, get ready. Caesar, you're going to have to get out of the way, buddy. You ready? Here goes. All right, this is basically planet porn, but it's not of my doing. Now, this is called the Venus Mons. You see that bump right there? That is spinning through the atmosphere of Jupiter, causing a cloud swirls. I'll show you in a minute. Now, get ready. This is graphic. This right here, that right there is why I can say, and of course the hairline and everything, I can say what I'm going to show you is a vagina. But the main part is that little tab right there. That's the part there's no denying what I'm going to show you. All right, so stick around. Phase 2. All right, this is the great red spot. It has all of the clitoris, the labia minor and majora, the vaginal canal, the ripples. It has the hairline, and it has that tab. You see that tab? That's the tab that's on the other one, on a human. And this is literally the hairline. This is a vagina, just like a human vagina. And out popped Venus. And this was exactly what was written. That is identical. And here's what happens around Jupiter. Because don't forget, it's a mound, a Venus Mons. You know, it interrupts the flow of the atmosphere. I'll show you. All right, so don't forget, the body part is here, but it has a mound, the Venus Mons. All right, as it travels through the atmosphere, it disturbs the atmosphere and causes vortices. All right, because here's how big it is. And it's going this way through all the gases. And there was a mound here. Now, of course, this is showing what it would be like if it gave birth. But it is literally a mound right there. And as that goes through the gases, they just tumble around it. It's not a storm. It causes vortices. You see that? That's not hard to understand. This is a bump. It bumps up as the planet goes that way through the gases, which are pretty dense up there on Jupiter because it's so gravitationally attractive to these heavy gases, and it plows through that layer of atmosphere, and it has to swirl around it. There's no other way. It doesn't go over, it goes around. That's what that is. This is not a storm. That is a vagina, my friends. So, talking about what Velikovsky's research said, what the ancient texts say about Jupiter, the feared god Jupiter, gave birth to a fiery comet which caused the Great Flood. That's what was written. I didn't write that. Okay, like I said, this is strictly examining what we can examine. And why are they calling Satan the morning star? And they also call Jesus the morning star. And they call Lucifer the morning star. So who is the morning star? You know, there's been a lot of discussion about this, but I don't think there's been any actual agreement as to what all this means. Now, let's think about this. Why are they referring to all this? What did Jesus actually say about himself as being the morning star? Did he say anything about that? Okay, this is confusing but very interesting. Now, this is Revelations 22:16, and we're talking about, is Jesus the morning star? And he says it in several places. It talks about being the morning star, I think. Now, this one specifically says this, and this is the King James Bible. They all have basically the same words. Now, it says, Jesus has sent his angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. Here's what he wants him to testify. Jesus, I am the root, the beginning, and the offspring of David. So he was the root of David and the offspring of David. Sounds like to me. So I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. Now, a couple of ways you can take that. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. Which offspring of David? David is the bright and morning star, or David the bright and morning star. Somebody added that "and," I think, because up here it says, I am the root and the offspring of David, the bright morning star. Now, David could very well have been the bright morning star, which brought destruction and caused the great flood. Now, who was Lucifer? Who was Satan? Boy, I'll tell you, it gets very, very confusing. But they all say about, I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright morning star. That's what it says. Okay, my friends, this is about the birth of Venus from Jupiter. And it also is about the morning star, because Venus is literally the morning star. Now, who else was referred to as the morning star? Actually, Jesus said, I am the morning star. And others have said that Lucifer is the morning star. Now, I like to go to the bottom of this. I don't just slough stuff off and say, oh, well, they're all just confused. Forget about that. That's crazy. Well, sometimes I do, but I dig deeper. And I don't know, I can't, this is a tough thing to figure out. But this is back in 2016. I tried to figure out the chemistry of what we were looking at, because I go physical. And this is Jesus chemistry. This is a paper I wrote in 2015 or 2016. It's up on academia.edu. And it says, what chemistry is there? Is there any chemistry that we can look into? So I said, Mudfossil researchers, which is me, at mudfossil.com, did the research. What was looked for was extraordinary materials that coincided with worldwide events recorded at this time in antiquity, long ago. Matter is made of molecules, which are made of elements. All right, everything is made out of this stuff. Can we figure anything out? Matter will only bond with other compatible matter to form minerals, etc. So what does that have to do with Jesus and all this business? All right, so what is this based on? What am I basing my research on? All right, I'm presenting this as a clinical work on our history. All original texts, stories, religious works, and carvings, tablets, myths of all cultures have been considered in this paper. The sources range from scholarly translations to museums to Immanuel Velikovsky, spelled wrong, it's supposed to be with an I, who I must call a hero, and he is my hero, and I wrote a book about him at the same time. His research was legwork. He went all around the world. He actually went to these places. No computers, and many documents that were unimpeachable evidence of Venus' recent arrival. Everybody had the same story. Now, this video explains the documents. 60 points that Velikovsky made are in this video. He was a friend of Einstein, was about to be acknowledged by Albert Einstein, but when he died with Velikovsky's book on his open on his bed, 32 points he made came true about Venus, all under scorn from academia, against academic theory. A great hero was destroyed. And there's another video, I don't know, these are probably both my videos, but he was destroyed. They just ruined him top to bottom because he didn't conform to what they wanted him to say in academia. It's just like me, same thing. And I've been destroyed too. And I got a feeling I'm going to be getting destroyed worse. We'll find out. All right, but this is a shocker. I love that word, shocker. This is 2016. And in chemistry, when tied to the recorded events, it's unimpeachable. It cannot be disputed. The chemistry's there, the recorded events are there, and they're the same. A short video presents the evidence clinically. Video case for Jesus, the chemistry and the stories, do they match? All right, that's another video I put up, apparently. I just don't remember. It's been a long time ago. What is the chemistry? What are the events? It is stated that milk pellets, red dust, and stones fell during Exodus. All right, the manna in the desert, red blood fell everywhere, and big stones wiped out tons of people. Jesus states it was literally his body that fell to feed the refugees. He said, my body fell to feed the refugees. I am the bread that came down from heaven. Now, they say, well, he means something else by that. Well, maybe. But he said that. That's what he said. They were asking, is this not Jesus, the son of Joseph, whose father and mother we know? How can he say, I have come down from heaven? Stop grumbling among yourselves, Jesus replied. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they will all be taught by God. Everyone who has heard the Father and learned from him comes to me. So you have to hear the Father, you have to learn, you have to understand, then you have to come to Jesus eventually. Not that anyone has seen the Father except the one who is from God. Only he has seen the Father. Truly, truly, I tell you, he who believes has eternal life. I am the bread of life. Now, does that mean the bread of life that came down in the manna? Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, yet they died. So this is the bread that comes down from heaven so that anyone may eat of it and not die. That's a little confusing. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. I think you must eat of the bread as knowledge. That's how I'm taking this. I don't know. This is confusing. You can take it literally or you can take it figuratively. Anyway, and this bread, which I will give for the life of the world, is my flesh. At this, the Jews began to argue among themselves, how can this man give us his flesh to eat? Now, being born from Venus, a body of a little creature, which happened to be a planet called Venus, would have a placenta, and its milky, gelatinous afterbirth. It would rain in pellets of dried milk on the earth, maybe. That's the only thing I can think of that would do it. Red dust fell heavily. Afterbirth blood would do that, as it is dense with red iron oxides, FeO3. Stones fell, and the umbilical cord is made from very tough silicates in a Chinese finger trap configuration that would shatter as just scads of stones. All these events happened at the same time and were recorded around the world everywhere. 60 text points Velikovsky made are there. This is the Velikovsky research is based on these facts, and that's that link. Now, here's where, I shown the things about the dragons and all that stuff. I can only tell you that's true. The dragons were there, and they were eating their children to keep them from becoming the new rulers. All right, so what does it say about Revelations 12? It says God's Son was born in space. Now think about these words. This is supposed to be something that's going to happen in the future. I think it happened before. Think about these words very carefully. A great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun. She was so big that she was on the moon. The moon was under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars were on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Now this is some kind of gigantic creature. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon, 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. Now, remember, a third. His tail swept a third of the stars. That's, if there was 600 watchers, apparently there were. He had 200 of them. He swept to earth, which apparently was Satan. He was the god, the sexual god, and he took 2/3 of his buddies, other angels, and they all came down to earth. He swept them and flung them down to earth. And now this same dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth so it might devour the child the moment he was born. Now listen to this carefully. She gave birth to a son, a male child who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. Boy, that doesn't sound like Jesus, but how do you rule? How do you rule? This is a very, very difficult thing to talk about because there's so many ways you can go with this. Anyway, that's what it says. She gave birth to a son, a male child who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God and to his throne. All right, now that sounds like Jupiter to me, Zeus. It's exactly the same story. He was going to be eaten by his father, and he ended up being snatched away and been hidden, and it's what the ancient texts say, but he was the child of Zeus. Now the woman fled into the wilderness, a place prepared for her by God where she might take care of for 1260 days. Then war broke out in the heavens. And these people on earth could literally see these gigantic creatures having wars in the heavens. They wrote all about this stuff, and they took it all out of the ancient texts because it was just too spectacular for the human mind to even consider. As soon as they saw that, these people are insane. Get them out of here. And that's what happened. And then they just ripped it all out of the text, and they sort of, like there was, in the beginning there was chaos. And there was this and there was that, and very, it just barely scratching the surface of what really did happen. But anyway, she gave birth to a son, a male child, who ruled all the nations with an iron scepter. That sounds like Zeus. That sounds exactly what Zeus was. And her child was snatched up to God, to his throne. All right? Then war broke out in the heavens. Michael and his angels fought against that dragon, which was apparently Zeus. And the dragon and his angels fought back. But when he was not strong enough and they lost their place in heaven, the great dragon was hurled down. Now, we could take that as Typhon, or I don't know. Anyway, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan. All right, he's the dragon. He was Satan. He was going to eat the baby. The baby was saved and would rule the earth with an iron scepter. All right, he was the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to earth and his angels with him. That, I think, was the 200 angels. All right, now, I'm showing that all of these body parts in space, Comet 67b is a body part. There was a bloody battle in heaven, giant, enormous creatures being slaughtered in heaven. I have links all over the place here. A dragon carcass of enormous size is found in Morocco. This is the one I'm talking about. And this goes back like 10 years I did all this stuff. The video shows a fake white one, and at the time was admitted as possibly only not fact. It turned out fake. Apparently I showed it in one of these videos. It actually was a fake. Somebody presented it as a true dragon. No. Birth of Venus as a fiery comet during Exodus 3,500 years ago. Exactly what Velikovsky says. Actually 3,700 years ago. About 1500 BC. Now, it was recorded in Egypt in the Bible. Earth was wrenched during this time. This was the Great Flood. Venus was a comet, almost destroyed Earth. It killed Mars. It almost hit Earth. It came back and almost hit Earth again and ended up smacking dead into Mars, wiped everything off of Mars. Now, what about the giants in the Earth? Mudfossil soft tissue finding 2012 here in my town led to a detailed chemical and anatomical study, including 3 DNA tests, 7 CAT scans, much lab chemistry that creates the feldspar-associated tissue fossilization. That's the aluminum silicates, which creates the feldspar, which is all from membranes. Feldspar is nothing but a phosphorus. Aluminum silicates boiled down from phosphorus. You see this? Phosphorus. That's what membranes are made of. Aluminum silicates are what all the feldspar is, and it coats almost every rock there is, because basically every rock there is some kind of body part. I had, in addition, an autopsy teacher trains others worldwide, agrees these are creatures. These are the DNA tests from them. The DNA print was 100% human, and CAT scans were obviously human finger with a fingernail bed, another with the nail turned mineralized. Everything was done. While harvesting the DNA, extreme caution was used. Covered specimens, sterile tools, drilled deeply. Specimens are available to test. Anybody wants to say I'm wrong? These are giants as stated in the Bible. All right. Battles, the matter on Comet 67p is also biological. And so is the same thing on Mars. 100%, no question whatsoever. And it was refused to be examined by the people that are supposed to be teaching us the truth. Very, very disturbing. All of this stuff is disturbing. These are the people that are leading the world astray. The battles raged in heaven, as it says in Revelations 12:7. Then war broke out into heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels fought back. He was not strong enough, and they lost their place in the heaven. And now they're down on earth, and this is a problem for us. All right. The conclusion is that the chemistry supports the Jesus story. And there's a couple of ways of looking at that story. I'm not telling you one way or the other. But as far as I'm concerned, Jesus came here and was sent here by his Father. Whoever that is must be the big God. And Jesus came here to warn us and say, you better pay attention to what I'm telling you, because this stuff is real. I know it sounds insane, but it's real. And if you don't pay attention to me, you could end up in that insane place for eternity. Not just for a weekend visit. You'd be tortured for a weekend. Eternity lasts a lot longer. All right, so I suppose that's about all I have to say, but I want to go back and start looking deep into how those wars in the heavens all, but I guess they could see these creatures in heaven. They were gigantic creatures. They were physical, gigantic creatures. Comet 67P is a hip bone, and it's bigger than Raleigh, North Carolina, to cover the whole place. And these creatures were absolutely stunningly large, and I have pointed them out over and over and over and over. They just came back from asteroid Bennu with a sample, and it is muscle sarcomeres, phosphates, which are the membranes, and I can actually see the muscle sarcomeres. It will have all the chemistry of blood because it came off a heart. Asteroid Bennu is a heart, and so is asteroid Psyche. They're both identical. Psyche, though, got close to something really close to hitting a planet or something because it's smelted to a degree and it's turned into almost total iron on the outside. But you can still see all the valves and everything else. So all I can tell you is that stick with me and keep paying attention to this. And I'm going to tell you right now, the way I was brought up is not the way you should be brought up. I wasn't brought up badly. I was brought up just like everybody else. But that's not the way we should have been brought up. We should have been brought up a whole different way. And I did not have that type of empathy when I was younger, which I know I have, and I know I understand, and that's pretty recent. And I beg forgiveness for all the things that I did before I understood. And that's all I can do. And I'm just hoping for the best, my friends, because as far as I'm concerned, it does not end here. I love you.